everybody, this is Awais back with another video on the channel. This is going to be the fifth part of a complete mobile app development walkthrough using IONIC framework version 5. This is the fifth video of the series. Now here's our code, and the current state of our application is this. So I've got this dashboard page. I can click on this plus button, add some expense, select the type, and add that. Now right now we can see the data in our dashboard page, but also if I type some string here, right, and I can click on add, you'll see that string is appearing. We want to restrict user to be able to only input numbers, not strings. So in this video we are going to validate our form. So here our expense component form, and I'm gonna validate it. So here we got an amount, and we can bring in validators from Angular, and we can set that as required. Let's save the file. We're gonna go and open add expense component, and here it says input type is set to text. I'm gonna change that to number. Let's save this file, and now it's gonna be required. Okay. The type is required, so we'll just do validators dot required as well. Now in terms of our add button, we're gonna go here. I'm going to give space here, and I'm going to use disabled attribute, and I'm gonna access this add form, add expense form dot valid property. Okay, I'm gonna negate it. Okay, I'm gonna save this file, and now we are going to take a look at this button. So now this button is disabled. Okay, so as long as I'm typing something like 50, okay, description would be this is the demo expense. We select the type, click on add, and now it's been added. So there you go, you got that. Now it's good idea to add a dollar symbol there. So ideally we should have like a currency symbol depending on where the application is going to be used, but that's out of the scope of this initial stage of the application. Okay, but now we've got this validity. Another thing that I would like to paste here would be some sort of like different kind of types there. Right now the types are not exactly what I wanted. To remove these options, save the file, and I'm gonna paste options here. So we've got these kind of options right now. Ideally this should be coming from an object, but for now we just leave them in our static HTML. Let's go to an application, reload, and we should be able to see the application running. Now there are some errors that we are seeing. This is uncaught promise template parse error. So there's probably an error for our select. So here we got ion select, and here we got ion item. I'm just gonna probably close that ion select there, and let's see if the error goes away. Yep, the error goes away. So we got this, let's just say 500. We got this. This is the demo expense, and I'm just gonna see all of these types that I can add. Let's click on mobile, click on add, and we got the type as mobile, and then the price and stuff. Okay, now let's save this file, and we're gonna go to actually make sure that this data is going to be stored. But first let's modify some of the UI for our card. So I'm gonna go to dashboard HTML, and here we got the card. So for the amount, I would like to concatenate this dollar symbol, and maybe change the size as large if that has a property there. We got a description, we got a date there. Now in terms of date, I would like to move this to a little bit right. So let's just have a look at the UI now. We're gonna have to keep adding this, so I might want to do something, just the default value for that observable, so we could see this is the demo expense. I'm gonna select the type, click add. Now we still got this dining out here. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to, move that to the right. So I'll modify this UI by actually putting that into a grid. And I'm going to get rid of these two labels there. Let's see what we have. Again, we still gotta keep adding this expense. I'm just gonna fix it in a second. Let's add it, and there you go, a date there. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to add some sort of like ion label, or maybe ion text should do the job. Cut it, paste it here, and then I can define some of the, like, a color or different properties here for this task. That should be okay. Now, because I need to keep adding, what I'll do to fix this, I'm gonna go to data service, and within data service here, when we initialize this is like a null value. So instead of null, I'm going to add amount here. So that would be like, let's just for now, because this is just a demo. Now, if I open up an application, it will always be here. So, no need to add stuff here. Also, I just realized if I go to dashboard, I'm going to give a space here. Okay, that's looking good now, guys. So for the text, I'm actually going to get rid of this footer. Let's save this file and let's, yep, looking good. We're going to use a storage service to store expenses in a local storage and then retrieve from there. So here we got save to local storage function, which requires a key and a value. A value is set to any. We would like to have that value as string. So here we are stringifying that. Okay. So let's go to our action service option to add that functionality in action service, because here we're creating an expense. You can import that storage service in action service, or you can go to data service, and here when you are setting an expense, you can store from here as well. Now the good way of doing it is by adding that in action service, because data service should only be responsible for emitting data. I'm gonna fix this constructor indentation, add a comma, and I'm gonna use private storage service and just add that storage service here. This one. Okay. Now when we use this storage service in our create expense function, we're going to call this storage service set, or actually save to local storage. Now the key would be the date of expense, because we would like to give our user a functionality to be able to, store this via date and then retrieve it via date. To create a key for that expense when you store that in a local storage, so we just use const equal to. Now I'm going to go to date and time service and create a function there which will return us a new date in a string format. And it will take a parameter, and that will be used to create a date. So I will do get date time, okay, and then that will take a parameter as a date object, and it should return a string. So we'll just do return moment, and that will take as a date. It will format that as well for me. Okay, now it says get the time, and we can just say string, and this could be an optional. So if there is no date, then we should create a date, otherwise get the current date and time in ISO. So get current, rename this function. So I'll say get date and time ISO, and we can use the ternary operators there. So if date's there, then we should return moment with date format. Okay, otherwise just grab a moment dot format. Okay, that function will return if there is a parameter date. So we're going to go to action service, and here we're going to use date and time service. So I'll just inject that here. So date time service. Let's remove this import, and here I would like to use this dot date and time service dot get ISO, and we can pass in this expense dot created on. Okay, that will return us a key, and then the key will be passed in here. Okay, and then the value would be just an expense itself. I'm going to save this code. Let's test our application. Now here I've got one expense. I'm going to go to application, double click on local storage. So right now we don't see anything here. I'm going to go click on this plus button, add an expense there. So new expense. Let's select the type, dining out, click on add, and there you go. Once I add that, you see in application, we are storing this date key, and then the value for that is new expense, dining out, and this is the date here. And the key is something like, 20, 20, 30, and then whatever the time is there. Now, one thing I would like to change here is I don't want to have that as a date, full key. I would like to just get that just date, not the time. So I could, once I retrieve the data, I could retrieve it by a date. I'm going to go back to date and time service, and here I would like to format my date like so. Okay, so if you're not sure what I did, if you're gonna go to moment.js, and here you'll see a formatter that you can pass in, and it will format a date like that. Okay, and we're gonna go back to our code, and I'm gonna try utilizing that formatter. Now I'm just gonna go and add another expense. So let's just say adding expenses here, click on add, and now we got the date here. Now another thing that I would like to do here is I would like to add these expenses in an array. Okay, so not just an object directly. That I'm going to go to storage service, and I would like to create some function which are really specific to storing expenses, not just a generic function like save to local or get from local. Okay, start by creating a function. So I'm going to use async, and I say save expense to local, and that will basically return promise void. Okay, and within this function we need to have an expense. So I'll just use expense parameter, and we say it's going to be an expense interface. Now here I would like to create a key right here. So I will say const key equal to, and we're going to inject date and time service right here. So we'll do private date time service. Okay, and I'm going to use this date time service dot get date in ISO, and then that actually formats the date like that. Okay, so that's what I wanted. Now once we got the date key, I'm going to call this save to local function with the key. So I'll say this dot save to local, and then the key would be a date, and then we are going to store that expense as an array, and a value would be expense. So here, first of all, what we need to do is grab the current expenses for that particular key there. So I'll use this dot, I'll say const this dot get from local, and that would be a key. Got all the today's expenses. Let's just add an s here as well. So I'm going to use today's expenses dot push, and that would be an actually array. So we're going to have to specify the type there. So expense interface as an array, and we can call it dot push, and that would be an expense. Okay, once we have that, now the problem here is that we're not sure if we're actually grabbing those expenses in an array. So we're gonna have to make sure that we store expenses in an array. So here I would like to use this expense interface, and then we just use this value as an array. Okay, then we are going to basically not see this, so this error. Also, I'm actually going to just create this, not actually assign this value. So what we're going to do is dot then, and if we're going to get all the expenses, and we can do like expense, that would be an interface. Now within this, I'm going to assign this actually like that. Today's total equal to expenses. And here we're going to give a space there. Now here we got an error. It says attempt to assign to read-only variable. So we're going to change this to let, and then the error will go away. I'm just going to format it. Now we got that today's expenses. Then I'm going to push that expense. Okay, once I push that expense, after that I'm going to call another then, and I'm going to store those expenses there. Now within this, I don't really expect to have anything, so I'm going to say this dot save to local. Okay, and then the key would be this today's date, and then the value would be today's expenses, and that's about it. I can ignore that, or I can just use that, then catch the error. Now once done, then I'm gonna catch the error here. So we just say if there is an error, then please go and log that onto console. I'm gonna write another function which will specifically get expenses from a local storage depending on the date. So we'll use async. It says get expenses from a local, and I'm going to make sure that I return an array of expense interface. Okay, I'm going to create a key, and that would be this dot datetime get date ISO, and we can basically get that optional date if we want to, and that can be an object of date. Now we got that key there, and if there is a date, then we can have a key as let me just do an expression. So if date is there, then this dot date and time, so you get ISO. Otherwise just grab me the current date. So this dot date and time, we get the current ISO. Okay, that's our key there, and then we are going to use that get from local storage. So we'll do this dot get from local storage. The key would be the key. Then after that, we're gonna call this then, and I'm expecting expenses to have an expenses array. Okay, and then we can return from let's just say return expense. I'm gonna just rename that as expenses. Okay, now we're gonna call this return there as well. Let's save the file, and now we should be able to return this. Now the problem here is that it's saying it's not returning, async function is not returning, so we're gonna have to type await here, and that should fix the problem. And also it's gonna be a promise. Okay, now this two function should do what it's supposed to do. So let's try them out. So I'm going to go to action service. Instead of using this save to local and key, I'm actually going to just say this dot storage service dot save expense to local, and that would be this expense, and that's about it. And yeah, that's about it. And this dot data service dot send expense, yep, that should be it. Now let's verify if it's actually storing that expense. So I'm going to click on this plus button, type an expense value or amount. So this is the expense. Let's select the type, click on add, and then we got that here, but we're not able to see if that was actually added. So what happened here? So I'm going to go to console. It says cannot read the property of push of null. So we go to storage service and see what is null. So it's saying it cannot read the property of null push. So today's expense is actually null. So I'm going to actually push that, actually initialize it with like an empty array. Okay, so let's just try now. Click on this plus button, 45, this is the expense, and then let's just say select this, and then again cannot read the property of push. If I go to application, I can see there's no value there. So there's still an issue because this is actually an empty array. We're setting that as, you know, expenses when it comes back, and I'm going to log this for now. So I'm going to do a debugger, so we could do debugging here. So let's save the file, and I'm going to try that one more time. Click add, and we got a debugger, and here we're saying it's null, and we got expenses as null. So here we're gonna have to because it's the first time a user going to use this, that's when we are going to actually do an if here. So I'll say if expenses equal to null, then we don't do a logic here. Otherwise, we're going to actually do like this. Okay, and let's just get rid of this line, get rid of this line. So here, what we're supposed to do, if the expenses are null, because I mean there's no expense there, then we can simply go today's expenses dot push, and we can just push an expense there, and once that expense gets pushed, that's about it. Okay, we got one value there. So let's save the file, and now let's refresh the page. Okay, that's looking good. Now I'm gonna go and add an expense. Let's just say 50. Let's say this is the expense, and we can add like grocery here. So I'm gonna go to application tab, click on add, and now I don't see that. Okay, I do see that actually. That's good for me. Okay, now we got the console, no error as well, so that's really good. If I refresh the page, go to application, and here we can see I've got that expense there. So first of all, let's go to data service, and I'm gonna get rid of this demo object here. So I don't want to, add. So we'll just do a null value for now. Okay, I've got rid of that. And then when the app initializes, I would like to grab those expenses and put them into the dashboard page. So for that, I'm going to go to storage service again, and here we got to get expenses from local storage. So what we can do here is go to where are they? Dashboard component, and here in ng-on init, I'm going to actually, when there's a constructor, I'm going to use this data service, actually not data service, but the storage service. So let me just fix the indentation here in a second. So we'll do private storage service. I guess I'm not gonna add a storage service here. I'm actually going to grab an action service to do the job for me. So it says create expense. I'm going to use an async function and say get today's expenses from local, and this should return a promise with expense interface array. And then I'm going to use this dot, actually return that with await this dot storage service dot get from, okay, get expense from local. I'm going to just verify if it's actually going to get that. I mean, if it's actually going to, okay, that's fine, because if we don't provide a date, it's going to take a default date. Then once we got that, then I'm going to do, then it's gonna actually grab me expenses, and then we're just going to return those expenses. Okay, this is looking good. Now we go to dashboard, and here when there's a constructor function, okay, I'm going to use this dot action service. So do private action service I can say this dot actions dot get today's expenses dot then, and then when the value comes in, then we can set this dot expenses equal to a value. Okay, now I'm gonna save this file and there's no errors. Now if I refresh, I can see there's a $50 expense there. If I click on the plus button, I can say $100, and I can say this is the $100 expense. Select that as a mortgage, click on add, and now we got this, expense there, $100 expense. Now if we take a look at this bit, we got probably 2 objects now. Here you go, we got 2 objects right in a local storage. Now if I refresh this page, the data is still gonna be there, because every time I get to this dashboard page, I make a call to local storage and get that date, and then you get the basically grab all the data, all the expenses for that particular date. Okay, that's about it for this video, guys, and in the next video we're going to start filtering out the data, and then we're going to make sure that we actually more polish our UI as well and make use of these 2 buttons if we want to add or delete data as well. So that would be coming up in the next video. Make sure to subscribe, and if you like the video, please give this video a thumbs up and help me out by donating. There's a link in the description of this video for the PayPal. All right, thanks for watching. Talk to you guys in the next one.